look at, so I've sort of set the stage with looking at fibroids, looking at what fasting does, and then what are the potential effects. So I've looked at it from both sides, that yeah, fasting could have some benefits, but there are also some concerns when it comes to fasting. So let me pull up some of the questions that prompted this discussion. And, you know, I'm so glad that, you know, one of the persons who asked the question is on the stream. So they said, strong relationship. So they wanted us to look at a strong relationship connection between dry fasting for 18 hours and bleeding fibroid shrinkage. Well, just trying to put this thing together, these words together. I think this person is asking, is there a strong connection between dry fasting for 18 hours plus, so a type of intermittent fasting where you're not eating for 18 hours and then your window is 6 hours, and shrinking fibroids or managing bleeding? Like I've just said, there is no strong evidence that this type of fasting will alone will directly shrink fibroids or stop fibroid symptoms like heavy bleeding. There is no medical evidence, but I can see some benefits in terms of affecting the weight, especially if it's done in a supervised fashion. If the fasting is where you're not just restricting and not eating the right food during the 6-hour window, whatever type of intermittent fasting, if you're not eating the right food during the 6-hour window, because if you're eating processed foods can contribute towards fibroid growth. Processed foods, sugar, salt, all these will contribute towards the growth of fibroids. So you really need to be looking at the type, the quality of food you're eating. So it's quality and quantity that are the key terms here. So while I would not agree that there is a big relationship connection, because we just don't know. We don't have those studies. We have stories of people who say, yes, I had fibroids, I did fasting for this number of days, and bam, my fibroids shrank, bam, the bleeding stopped. If it happens for them, we can't say it's going to happen for every single person, thanks to individual variation. We don't know what else was going on, and we don't know what was particularly in line responsible for their fibroids, different to your experience. So these are different things to think about. So that's that question. I've got the second one here. So somebody says, yeah, pretty much the title of my video, fasting and fibroids, what's the connection? So this is what I'm talking about. The connection is that fasting can help with weight loss. Fasting potentially could help with hormone balance. Fasting potentially could help with managing inflammation. And these are things that we associate with developing fibroids, but not them alone. So many different things. I mentioned your ethnic background. I mentioned your family history. I mentioned age. I mentioned being overweight. All these things also play into fibroids. I mentioned endocrine disrupting chemicals, and that's really important. And we're finding out more about this in the last few years, how relevant these things are, because these are chemicals that are used when manufacturing the things we use every day, whether it's plastics or whether it is the cosmetics we use in our hair or that we use in our body cream and so on. And so we need to be conscious of these things, and especially if you have fibroids or some other kind of chronic condition, be conscious of the potential for these things to affect your health. So what's my bottom line on this? If you're somebody with fibroids and you're so convinced that you don't want to have conventional treatment, you don't want to take medication, you don't want a myomectomy, if you still want to have children, or if you're past childbearing age, you don't want to have a hysterectomy, if these are the options that have been offered to you, fair enough, and you don't want them.